Hey guys, Hector here with part 2, my whole racial discussion video series, I guess you can say. If you haven't seen the first part, click the I in the top right corner. Well, it's this way, top right corner, and then I'll give you a little link or whatever to the first video. Alright, so in this video, as I promised, I want to talk about the whole, are you really American, or are you a different race American? This whole issue that's been in the US. If you're not familiar, if you haven't been in the US, you're not really familiar with it, that's why I'm going to be talking about it in this video. So, of course, American isn't really a race unless you count the natives of America, what we call American Indians or just Native Americans. But some people start arguing over whether you really are American or if you're just like Mexican American, Indian American, like Indian American, Chinese American, whatever. So some people, they want to be close to their cultural roots and their background, and they like to keep up with that. And then some people say, well, since you're in America, you're just American now, you should pretty much abandon that old stuff and just pretty much assimilate into American lifestyle, which I think is BS, because the thing about America is it's just become a whole mix, what we usually call the melting pot of all these different races and cultures, ethnicities and stuff, all these different backgrounds coming together and creating this whole different thing. And it's more so true for white people because, of course, white people still are the majority, and we just call them white people now because they've just mixed all together. Of course, they aren't from the same country, they don't have the same background. You know, we got Germany, we got Ireland, we got Scotland, we got Wales. There's just so many different countries with so many different backgrounds, and they've already merged together and just are considered white pretty much. But if you really look and delve deep, there is a background in there that some people still like to hold, you know, to their family line, but some people have been in the US for so many generations that they just forget about it and say, I'm American. Which I kind of find a little sad, sort of. But, you know, if your family has been in the U.S. for so many generations, I guess you can't really hate on them for forgetting their lineage, especially if they have already mixed with other ethnicities and backgrounds, and you can't really keep up, you know. So, some people will say, I'm American, that's just what I am. Some people will say, I'm X country American, and then they'll try and hold both. And then, of course, when it comes to mixed races like myself, they try and get as much information basically as you can from all these different backgrounds and try and kind of keep up with them. Like, well, with me, you know, I'm mostly Mexican and Spanish, so I mostly focus on that. But, of course, I'm also Native American. I believe I'm a little bit German, too. But since there's so little about that, I usually don't look too much into it. And I kind of abandoned that cultural background and that, you know, that kind of stuff. So I mostly identify as Mexican and Spanish, and I just talk about that kind of stuff and am more familiar with that sort of stuff. But if anybody has or hasn't seen the movie Selena, it tells a story of this one Mexican-American singer named Selena. And she kind of talked about being Mexican-American, and her father talked about being Mexican-American, how you can't fully be Mexican, you can't fully be American, you have to kind of be both as much as you can, and both of the sides will kind of not fully accept you sometimes. Like, Americans will be like, you're an American, you should be speaking English, and then the Mexicans were like, why aren't you speaking Spanish? And my family has even been like that. My grandparents mostly speak Spanish, they can speak some English, but then they just pretty much refuse to most of the time, even when talking with me, and then they get mad at me because I'm not speaking Spanish. And if I meet other Spanish or Mexican people, they'd be like, you're not really Spanish, you're not really Mexican, you're not speaking Spanish, or you're not dark-skinned enough or whatever, which is kind of BS because there are a lot of light-skinned Mexicans out there, just FYI. So sometimes there are people from their different sections that will say, you're not really us, and you have to work twice as hard and sometimes 3 times as hard. Like my niece and nephews, they're black and Mexican and American, so it can get pretty damn crazy sometimes being mixed or just being American in one other, you know, background. Because as I said, some of the white people just say I'm American and then they just forget about their roots. So some people don't even really want to date outside their race or ethnicity because it can get a little difficult. And I'm not just talking about the racist assholes out there who will say you're not allowed to date this race or that race. And there are some people out there, not a ton, I don't think, but maybe it's just because I live in California, I don't know. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just dealing with the differences in our cultural backgrounds. Like, well, like I said, my family mainly identifies as Mexican and Spanish. One of my sisters married a black dude, and so black and Mexican, we have some differences, but we have a lot of similarities, and it's not too different, and we're usually easy to kind of mix our cultures, I guess you can say. Another sister is dating a Mexican dude, so everything, all the food that we like is the same, so there's no problems. I have another sister who married a white dude, I believe he's Scottish background, I'm not sure. Anyways, so I believe she said that he only likes to listen or can only stand Mexican music for about 20 minutes, and he's like, all right, that's enough of that. And then of course, I don't think he likes all of our Mexican dishes, but my sister is totally okay with the Scottish dishes, I guess. But then again, he doesn't really hold those older food dishes from way back in his lineage. He mostly does the more Americanized dishes, and since we were brought up in America, that's totally fine with us. But not everybody in America is fine with Mexican dishes. So it can get a little difficult with cultural backgrounds and cultural differences. And some people will say, well, we're all American, it should be fine. But again, some people like to hold on to their cultural backgrounds, and there can be differences, and it's not always fine. And me personally, I'm totally fine dating outside my race. Although when I was younger, I did come across a bit of racism here and there, and so there was part of me. There was a time when I was like, maybe I should just stick with my own race because I don't want to keep dealing with all this BS. Like, even if I liked a girl from a different race and she was fine with it, there might be other people in her family that weren't fine with it, and that would cause a huge headache, basically. And it's not always just racial stuff too, it can be religious stuff. Like, I really like this one girl who's Muslim, but she says her family wouldn't allow her to marry a non-Muslim, and I'm pretty much atheist, agnostic, or whatever. I made a whole nother video talking about if I'm agnostic or atheist, depending on, or given my history or what I believe, basically. You can click the I also for that. But I think I talked a little bit too much for this video, so I think I'm going to cut it off right here, and I want to talk about one more racial topic in the next video. So thumbs up if you like this video. If you just appreciate me doing it, you can leave a comment with anything you want, any sort of comment, anything on your mind, or other questions either related to this topic or related to other American stuff, and I'd be glad to answer it. And in the next video, I want to talk about another racial topic, but about TV and movies and that sort of stuff. So see you in the next video.